Can I make a phone call? No, sir. You know, I have this American idea that you get a right to make a phone call. By the way, America doesn't have any rights anymore. It's no longer the land of freedom. They can make you disappear. They can torture you to death. They can execute you without even telling you why. They can hold you forever and ever incommunicado. They can take you to Guantanamo Bay and you can disappear. And there is no human rights anymore. All you have to do to justify it is a suspicion that you're an enemy of the state. You can be totally innocent, but that's okay. Once they suspect something, it is okay to disappear, make you disappear, and if they have to torture you to death. Before, they had to take you to another foreign country and torture you. Now Congress has approved, you can torture them right in the United States. The vice president of the country stood up and said, I would drown anybody in torture if I could just save the country. Oh, so the ends justify the means. It sounds like Rome to me. We're preparing for the Great Inquisition once again. We are preparing for the days when you Christians will once again, if you're not a member of the group that is approved, once again it will be okay for you to be considered a high-risk people. Sabbath keepers will be considered a risk to the nation. And if you want to know how you're going to be treated, just look at how they treat terrorists today. They don't call them terrorists anymore, they call them extremists. Don't you think Sabbath keepers will be called extremists? By the way, who's an extremist? Anybody who's not a liberal like me. And who defines that? I do. I'm a liberal, you're extremist. Go get them. Who shall stand is the question. There's hard days coming ahead. Very few people stand up to imprisonment and torture. Very few people will stand in that day. Only those that are true gold. Only those that have a relationship that goes deep. I don't tell this story very much in public, but when I was first born, I was born with intestinal defects, and God performed 3 major surgeries in the first 2 weeks of my life. The surgeon said, this child will never live because he doesn't even have the nervous system to digest food, the nervous system to process it, no peristaltic waves. He does not have half of his intestines. We've taken half of them out, trying. Half of the stomach is out. He cannot live. Prepare to bury this child. And my dad was preparing a sermon, but he decided just before leaving for the mission field and burying their firstborn son that they would anoint me. And they called Dr. Leslie Harding, their church pastor, and they anointed me, asking God if it's His will, if He had a plan for this baby's life to save him. The next day, the surgeon, who was not a Christian, came running to my mother, who was a nursing instructor, and said, I don't believe in God, but what happened with your son, only God could do. Because there's now normal intestinal activity. He has a new nervous system that he was not born with. Now God left my stomach full of scars, looks like the map of Vancouver. I always ask God, why could you heal the inside? Why don't you heal the outside too? I was embarrassed as a teenager. I'd cover up my scars when I go swimming. But people say, what happened to you? Let me tell you about the miracle. God leaves evidence of His footprints. But when I was young and a baby there, my father, who was in seminary, met a man and he said, guess where I just came from? I just came from the Washington Cathedral. I'm a government inspector. And I had to sign the papers to open up that building to the public. So I had a tour of the whole building. I asked to be led downstairs. And I went downstairs. And downstairs I saw some massive doors in the basement. And I said, what's in those doors? And the priest that was taking him said, well, there's nothing there. I want to see them. And so he insisted. And he opened the doors up. And there was 3 rows of tiers of cells. A whole prison underneath the Washington Cathedral. And he said, what do you have a prison for down here in a cathedral in a church? And the man said, are you a Catholic? He said, no, then it's none of your business. Just sign if they're safe or not. He said, I signed. And he said, I just thought you'd like to know what's downstairs in that modern cathedral. Sister White says that they're preparing once again to repeat the same activities of the Middle Ages. At the same time that the Pope is apologizing for using violence in the favor of truth, they're preparing once again for violence. A couple days later, my dad's cousin came along and said, guess what I saw, Richard? What did you see? My dad said. I was delivering a load of construction materials to the cathedral, and a big truck pulled in with big boxes, and of course they were unloading them down a little wooden ramp and sending them down to the bottom window into the basement, and they unloaded about 100 boxes. And I was sitting there unloading my materials, and the last box fell off and broke at my feet. It was full of machine guns. Why would my father and his cousin be witnesses of something that they didn't want anybody to know? Well, I grew up as a teenager. It was time to go on our senior class trip, and we decided to go to Washington, D.C. I began to remember my dad's stories. And we went to the Washington Cathedral. So I told all my friends, you want to do some investigation? Crazy teenagers. I told our teachers, if we don't show up on time, we're at the bottom. Don't leave us. What are you going to do? Can't say. So we got our flashlights out. I always come prepared. And as the groups were walking along and the nun was giving us a tour, she kept looking back. We kept dragging back. Boys, catch up. Man, she was sharp. She wouldn't let us get 20 feet behind. But then we said, we got to do something more aggressive than this. So as soon as she looked the other way, we slipped behind the curtains. When she turned around, we were gone. So she kept on going. She didn't know where we were. And we realized that behind the curtains there was another whole world. Because the cathedral wasn't finished yet. Just the part that was public. Behind the curtain was a lot of unfinished construction. And we went to the computer room, went through all the halls, went up and up, found hidden staircases, hidden things. We went everywhere. We found an old bathroom open with a window that went down 200 feet straight down in the darkness. I wish I'd have brought a rope. We threw a rock down. We had just studied physics, so we got our stopwatch. Ready? Throw. Boom. Calculator, quick. So many feet, using the laws of physics. We thought we were really cool. Private investigators. And then when we finally found the door, we found a person who worked there. Excuse me, sir, we have a question. Sorry, no speak English. ¿Habla español? Sí, sí. So we started talking. You have an accent. You must be from Spain. Yes, from España. I talked to several others. All of them from España. Why are you all from España? Well, you see, we don't have any Americans working here, only Spanish people. They brought us here all the way from Spain because we know how to obey the Mother Church. And we know what happens. They take us back and they punish us back in Spain. So we have a healthy respect for the church. They didn't say this, but the implication was Americans have this crazy idea of freedom of speech. So they brought us from Spain because we don't have those strange ideas. The fear that comes built in from generations of being in control. We discovered where the door was that went down. It had a double lock gate, double padlock. We discovered only the Father Superior carried the key to that. We discovered that only the Vatican visitors ever go downstairs. No other visitors except Vatican representatives went downstairs. So then we said, well, where can we talk to the Father Superior? Oh, the Father Superior. He's across the hall across the road in the diocese. So we went across the road. Knocked on the door. Sally, no speak English. Hermano, brother, how are you? Oh, please come in. We went in. He showed us around, showed us a desk, ripped off a piece of paper from the desk of the Father Superior, wrote down some information for us, and he said, you can come back tomorrow. He won't be here till tomorrow. But if you want to talk to somebody who's in charge, go talk to the Father so-and-so. He's back at the cathedral upstairs in the office. So we went back up, started talking to him. He was treating us very nicely. We said, we just finished studying some classes in architecture. Would you be willing to show us around the cathedral? Sure. We really want to go downstairs to the basement. Oh, I'm sorry, boys. We can't do that. Why? We just don't do that. Why? Well, it's just our policy. Why? Well, we've decided that we just don't take, tours down there. And I said, how come only people from the Vatican go downstairs? Who told you that?